Hey, Deserving listeners, I haven't done this in a while, but I thought I would react to your comments on my videos. I asked Stacy to compile a list of various different comments, and I think a lot of these are from members because they get preference. So this first comment is from my very first Love is Blind Season 7 video, in which we get to meet Brittany, I think, mainly. And good old Math Pi Hanan, who is a highest tier member of the channel, says, I just realized that as a therapist, you're trained not to react when a client says something weird or problematic. These reaction videos are probably your outlet where you can freely emote and react to weird comments like, I could easily seduce, when Brittany says, I could easily seduce any of these guys to fall in love with me and marry me. End of comment. Yeah, I don't know if I'd ever thought about it that way, but yeah, if I had a client that said something like that, I would not show a reaction. I wouldn't even be in a mode of having an internal reaction. I have trained myself over time, and also just my work has trained me to be more open and more accepting, more compassionate, and not react as if I'm an element of culture, or, I mean, of course I always am, but I've heard some extreme statements and disclosures and secrets from clients, and I've witnessed some extremely harmful and odd and alarming behavior in my office. It's not very often, but it happens. And internally, I just am not typically having a severe or even mild reaction unless they are scaring me, which can happen, and then I have an emotional reaction, but that's pretty rare. So yeah, if I had a client say, I could easily seduce any of these guys, or I could easily seduce anyone to fall in love with me and marry me, I would be like, okay, that's interesting. And I would file it away, or I would ask a question, or I would wonder about the hypotheses and the way that I do. So maybe my reaction in the reaction videos is in part the way that I am as a therapist internally and externally. But in terms of any aghast, is that a word? Any sort of gasp or alarm that I exhibit in session, I probably wouldn't even have internally. The next comment is from Grand Hoopla, says, Brittany is not my type of girl, but I like that she's in fact very honest about her wants. Just chiming in here. Yeah, she's honest. I remember thinking that. It's one thing to think that and hide it and trick people. It's another thing just to, that's what you want, and then you tell people that. And let's see. And the way she believes the world views her. I think she was the most honest person in this season and the one who learned the most, because seeing that she couldn't, in fact, merely rely on her looks truly shook her world. And then Lalo McKenzie says, what an insightful and compassionately minded take on what may cause a presentation like a seductive blonde. End of comment. Yeah, well, thanks, Mackenzie. And yeah, it's just the way that I see the world. I can't prove these things, but it's always panned out this way when I'm working with clients and we get beyond the surface level presentation, whether it's something like what Brittany presents, or something like what Leo presents, or something like what Nick presents, or Hannah presents. There's always a lot of depth there, and a much more likable human being, and a very logical reason as to why they would have those odd and off-putting outward presentations. All right, this next comment is from my Love is Blind Season 7, number 2, titled Digger versus Bragger. I don't know if you've noticed, but some of the titles this season have been a little funny. I have chuckled sometimes coming up with some of these titles, Digger versus Bragger. Let's see, Flala 1986 says, in French, I was asking, what do you call French fries in France, or French toast, or whatever? In French toast is called I think it's pronounced pain, perdu. Anyway, it's spelled pain perdu, but I think it's pain perdu. Anyway, which is literally lost bread because it's normally made from leftover bread. Okay. A French kiss has several names, but one expression is "c'est rouler des pelles." Pelle, to roll shovels to each other. I think I talked about that in a later video. And French fries, it's just called fries or frites, but you know it's not French, it's Belgian. I think I might have learned that at some point, yeah. We are known to be proud of being French, but thanks to Americans, we are proud of things we didn't know that we could be proud about. Yeah. All right, these comments are from my video Love is Blind Season 7, number 4, titled Slithering Surprise, if you remember what Hannah was talking about, her phobia. And I suppose maybe I was giving a little bit of Harry Potter there. Extravagant says, I always interpreted it. So what I think a lot of these people are commenting on is in this video, we saw that Taylor was not wanting to disclose her ethnicity and her mom's name, right? And I wondered what that was about. We could make a lot of assumptions, but from what she said, she just didn't want to get into what she looked like or what Garrett looked like. And that's the simplest explanation and the one that she said. But of course, we would wonder about other kinds of things like racism or worries about being exoticized or pigeonholed or stereotyped or fetishized or whatever. But she didn't say that. And I think I asked y'all what you thought. And at the time, I refrained from making any strong hypotheses or speculations beyond what she said, because as an Asian, as a half Asian American, I have had people assume things about me in this way in an attempt to acknowledge racism. But at times I'm thinking, you can't tell me what I'm worried about, you know? So I just didn't want to do that. But Extravagant says, I always interpreted it as Taylor being very vigilant about not being fetishized because of her Asian features, and that's why it mattered so much to her that he liked her for her personality and not her looks first. Yeah, that's absolutely possible. We'd have to ask Taylor, but I will refrain from assuming that because of what I said earlier. Chelsea Cara says, as someone in the nerd world, men are so creepy to any and all Asian women. I don't think it's weird at all that she didn't want to disclose it. It's a safety thing. It's like going online in a game and just not talking as a girl because you don't want the style everyone plays to suddenly change. End of comment. Yeah, I've had a glimpse of this, not towards me, but I've seen it directed at Asian women or Asian, half Asian women who are in the gamer world. I don't know if Garrett would have that kind of reaction. It's really just hard to say. We don't know. Sometimes when we meet their friends, we get a little glimpse into their cultural circle. And, there was maybe some indication of a direction of nerddom or culture or something. And so, yeah, but for you, I think what you're saying is either for yourself or what you've witnessed, that in the nerd world, Asian women or half Asian women are just completely, reacted to in this very strange way, both as get out of here, girl, this is a boys' place where we play video games, or all the guys suddenly are like, oh my God, how am I going to get with her? Or, stereotyping her as some kind of I'm an anime, giggly, Hello Kitty girl with no mouth, I've seen it all as an Asian guy and it's been changing over the years. It still has not, gone away. I would say in some ways it's gotten worse. In other ways it's gotten better. But yeah, it could be a factor. She didn't mention that, so we can't know. The Seach says, this is the feeling that a lot of black women on the show were expressing in previous seasons. There's a fear of fetishization, racism, things that happen in the real world. Garrett has never been around people of color in dating, so he clearly hasn't had to even think twice about race, so he thinks it's malicious. Right, end of comment. That scene was interesting, and there's a lot of possibility to project onto that scene our own bias or experience or traumas or something, and all of those projections could be accurate. A lot of people were assuming that Garrett was exhibiting his racism or his unfamiliarity with non-white people, and his discomfort, and he was yammering and saying this was malicious or nefarious, or what did he use the word malicious? Because she was not disclosing her ethnicity or not disclosing her mom's name, and and that's possible. I think the more likely scenario, or the one that I guess I would like to believe, because I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt until otherwise proven, that he is not the most smooth dude to begin with, and since he's not, he said he's never dated a non-white woman, and he is also probably in a cultural pocket where there's not a lot of mixing or contact or familiarity. And of course, in the United States, there are various different cultural pockets when it comes to the discourse around racism and around white men. And I'm guessing that he has absorbed something along those lines, for better or for worse, I don't know. And when he was just having a normal conversation, and I think he was already thinking that she was a little withholding, because she was that way slightly, not nefariously, but I think she was. I think both of them are just a little private, and I think that Garrett was trying to get, not information, but just trying to get to know her, and I think he was bumping up against some barriers there, or some coyness or something. If you remember in those first dates that we saw in the edit, Taylor did a fair amount of protective joking, and that, like that one moment when she's like, "So you're going to ask me to be your girlfriend?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Would you be my girlfriend?" And she's like, "No." And I burst out laughing. I thought, oh, wait, no, she's not joking. I guess I thought she was going to say no. "Oh, of course, yeah, of course I want to be your girlfriend." And she's like, "No, we'll see." And you're like, what was? I mean, it was fine. He rolled with it, and I think he took it for what it was intended, which I'm not even quite sure. But so I think he was in this mode of already thinking that she was withholding, and then when she withheld that bit of information, I think he was already ready to go with this, "Hey, I feel like you're holding back," or something. And I also think that he just got really awkward. He's like, "Oh shit, I'm a white guy. I need to mind what I say here." And I don't think he anticipated that she wasn't white, and didn't have that kind of, that at the very least that would be interesting, right? If you're assuming, and then, or you're not even thinking about the ethnicity, and then all of a sudden it's disclosed that at least she's not entirely white, So I think he was just like, and again, he's not the smoothest guy. And I think he just stammered because I think he was worried that he was going to step on a landmine or put his foot in his mouth. And that's all that it was. But a lot of people figured there was something else going on there. And I as a person of color, and as a person that, as a Japanese person that was born and raised in the 70s, which wasn't that long after World War II, a lot of World War II vets were alive, most of them probably, right? And Japan was the mortal enemy, particularly of the West Coast, like Seattle. And yeah, I've experienced a lot of things, I was driving down the road. I came to a 4-way stop in Seattle, which is one of the most progressive, liberal, supposedly non-racist place in the world, or at least the United States. And I came to a 4-way stop. I thought I got there first. I went, and then I went to another stop sign, and the car got behind me, and this young woman jumped out of the car, came up to my car. This is in Ballard, by the way. It's just if for locals, which is supposed to be like, at least one of the more progressive neighborhoods. She came up to my window and was just screaming at me. And when she saw my face, she called me a chink. And I just thought, what is happening right now? We came to a stop sign at the same time, and I thought I was there first. And I didn't cut her off. It's not like she went and then I went, I just thought, oh, okay. And then chink, like, wow. So, I've experienced many things like that. Kids would try to bully me as a kid. This one kid was bullying me and called me a Chinaman, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was at least his size, and so I just punched him, and he wasn't ready for it. I punched him in the stomach, and he wasn't ready for it. I mean, I didn't sucker punch him. He was getting in my face, and we were just both standing there. And I was like trying to hold together. And then he called me a Chinaman, and in my head, I'm like, I'm from Japan, so or of descent anyway. And so I punched him in the stomach. He wasn't ready for it, and it was the strangest sensation because normally when you punch someone in the stomach, they're at least kind of ready for it. So you get some resistance, and my fist went all the way through his gut, it seemed like, and he just like dropped like a sack of potatoes and started crying, and the teacher came out, and I was like, oh God, now I'm in trouble. And then the bully said to the teacher that he just tripped. So like Code of the Warrior or something. Looking back, he was a very troubled guy from a very troubled household. I didn't know that at the time, or if I did, I wouldn't have thought anything beyond that. But I feel bad for him, really, overall. But I don't know. You don't have to call me a racial slur. What was that about? And I don't even know what we were fighting about. I think he just decided to come after me. Anyway, so I'm not saying that there's nothing there with Garrett and with her reticence and hesitation, but I also don't want to have another layer of racism or stereotyping and assume what was in her head and her heart. We just don't know. And I've had that happen to me before. And I felt like it was just another version of racism, right? It's like there's the version of racism where I'm mistreated and people don't acknowledge it. And there's the version of racism where people assume my experience given the fact that I am Asian, which, it's like, don't assume. Ask, you can ask me, you can ask questions even in your mind, you can hypothesize, you can speculate, but you can't tell me what I went through and how I interpreted it, Let's take a break, and when we get back from the break, the rest of this video will just be for members of the YouTube channel. For these non-reaction videos, I want to reward the members. Thank you so much for being a member. And if you want to see the rest of this, then become a member if you want to and if you can. And that would be great. Because without the members and the patrons, I wouldn't be able to do this. Because, So thank you, and take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.